Dead Dungeon. This one's a pixel-perfect platformer on the masochistic side, similar to Super Meat Boy. It's a bit too unforgiving and extreme in most spots for me to call it good, but I reckon loads of players who live for this kind of game would happily disagree with me and rate it higher. Contrarily, if you struggle with platforming in highly precise ways, this is not a game for you. I tend to fall somewhere in the middle, so what I ultimately dig most about this game is how bite-sized most stages are, making it easy to find the wherewithal to just keep trying and eventually succeeding. Many stages even contain a few types of collectibles as well, in addition to online leaderboards for time to complete each stage if you're into that sort of thing. Oh, and there's also a threadbare story, with a boss at the end of the 50 levels on offer. Some enemies you can kill and some you can't. The bullet hell nature of the action reminds me of 0000, another semi-challenging plat. This one's way harder, to be clear. Small though the stages are, I could have done with checkpoints in certain spots, since repeating the non-stop skill checks while fighting the not as precise as they reckon they are controls is every bit as disheartening as the boss runbacks in Silk Song. And adding trophies for hundreds of deaths should have been an indication that something here isn't quite right. And that's down to movement being minutely jerky and jump heights registering unreliably at times, to say nothing of the razor-thin margins for error you're traversing through to begin with. I do like the evolving difficulty of hazards, but wish more character powers were introduced, or that there was a purpose to all the collecting beyond access to the boss. Lastly, the game could have done with some co-op, a level editor perhaps, and more length. Again, take my rating with a grain of salt and consider the type of gamer you are, because certain stages here made me want to rate this thing as weak and quit it forever. Sadly, when it comes to the plat, I don't feel much better about a recommendation. Did I personally find it addictive to chase? Yes, I really did. But the only saving graces to the game itself are what I'd consider cleverly designed levels and their relatively short length. Something I mention once more because you need to understand ahead of time that if not for the quick nature, I'd say this is on par with, if not harder than a game like Electronic Superjoy 2 to plat. Glancing at completion rates of certain trophies midway through the chase only made this warning feel more necessary. To explain, I would have stopped playing this game halfway through if that's where the plat unlocked. Unfortunately, I can get hard-headed when it comes to precision platformers, and I noticed I was completing certain parts of the game way ahead of most other players having died 500 or 1,000 times. And I'm not mentioning this to brag, just making clear that I was rarely enjoying more than the relief of having cleared the next dumb challenge, and most other players seem to be having an even harder go of it than I was. So while the guide calls this a 6, it's likely overcompensating for the game's short stages. I'd mentally prepare for a 7 or an 8 and know that it's okay to know upfront that you may get nothing but frustration out of that degree of difficulty. Blistered thumbs and angry adrenaline shakes are not why most folks play video games, after all. Still, if you're up for a challenge, this is one even the most snobbish of Souls fans can be proud of having notched on their belt. You've got to beat every stage, including the boss, collect everything, die a bunch, find the 2 secret levels in stages 24 and 39, plus fart an enemy to death by standing completely still for about 20 seconds. Best done in level 3. Nothing's missable, but the guide's 4 to 5 hour completion claim is understandably skill dependent. Some players may get it done in as little as 2 hours, while others take 10. It's not a chase or a game I'd recommend to those outside of the hardcore gaming community, but those types of players should take note, as this one's a massive ball buster. A few extra notes while we're here: you don't have to beat the bonus stages. Just get the collectibles and go back to level select. There's some misinformation floating around online that you can simply watch the credits from the menu to get the boss trophy. This is false. You have to beat him, which means you also have to beat the timing nightmare that is level 49. That someone has beaten this entire game with only 10 deaths in total is insane to me, thinking about the middle section of that level. It would be cool if you could see where you are in the leaderboards and not simply the top 10, by the way. It would also be cool if the timer was across the entire playthrough, not simply the single stage you just beat. Let me end this by highlighting this game's greatest potential, which also showcases its greatest weakness. The speedrunning community should seize upon this title as a superstar. People could do runs for fastest time to simply beat the game, fastest time to 100% the game, fewest deaths, etc. The reason why I suspect said community hasn't made this game a greatest hit is down to the fact that a no-death run seems like an impossibility, as regardless of what some reviewers who aren't even collecting the donuts in their footage say to the contrary, the controls are very minutely imprecise at times, and there's no room for that in these stages. This complaint may have something to do with my playing on a console instead of a PC, but it's only the fact that one person has beaten this with under 70 deaths, which makes me question the console controller's precision. Said players with me and having slogged through challenges like Peggle 2, but also has white whales of mine such as Maria the Witch and Hollow Knight. Basically, this is a hardcore game for resilient gamers, but the resilience required mostly comes from things outside of a player's skill set. You can actually see what I'm talking about by watching the speedruns which exist, with players unable to consistently land certain bits of traversal. You'll sometimes feel magnetized to spikes, or as though movement is hit or miss. And with no checkpoints in any of these stages with multiple rounds of skill checks to clear, it's a game most folks will never replay, assuming they can even beat it a first time. Pretty close to being good though.